Are you in quarantine? Have you not had a haircut in 8 months? Are you going bananas? Let's talk about bananas. You have yellow, green, and black bananas. Hey, that's a plantain. There you go. Yellow, green, and black bananas. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about yellow, green, and black bananas. Cables and jacks, that is. You see, in the Buchla world, these colors all mean something. Because Don embraced colors as a tool for communication. And what else would you expect from a man who wore 2 different colored socks? Let me explain. Banana cables go back to the 1920s. Bananas are excellent connectors with a ton of surface area and extremely easy to plug in. Great for low impedance signals like speaker connections. Not great for high impedance noise sensitive signals, but great for control voltages. Because in the Buchla world, bipolar audio is passed on shielded audio cables, and bananas are used for positive control voltages. It mirrors a distinction in design philosophy Don referred to as sound versus structure. CVs are the structure, the program. Think of the early analog computers like the Heathkit ES400. Look familiar? Look at all those banana jacks. Not a lot of colors. Likewise, Don only used a few colors initially, and the cables are gray. He used red jacks for pulses and black jacks for continuous control voltages. These 2 color jacks are still ubiquitous on scientific instruments today. And Don's early designs were symmetrical panels that were often hard to distinguish between. But that all changed. In the early 1970s, Don started selling cables that were colored to indicate length, to make patching quicker. See, each color represented a length using the colors of the rainbow. That's red, the shorting bar, orange, yellow, green, and blue, skipping indigo, violet. A few intermediate colors were added, and if you combined Pomona and Buchla USA cables, you get complementary lengths. It makes patching a large system much easier that when you grab a cable, you know its length. But these first cables were not stackable, so he had redundant banana jacks on outputs. With stackable cables, the extra jacks are no longer necessary. And let's focus on jacks. With jacks, color is about function, yet indicating what was an output or an input was not yet evolved. But in 1974, the easel came out, and now the colors of banana CV outputs were partially determined by their color-associated faders and switches, such as with white, orange, yellow, and with some exception, blue. And black bananas represented their inputs, and with convenient shorting bar distances between them. But the protocol was not yet complete for black and red, and black could still be an output. Even the first 218 still had redundant black outputs. But if Don himself were ever to reissue an easel, he'd insist on updating the colors. Don wouldn't have reissued a module without at least updating the colors to better indicate function. I know because he did. In fact, he was quite upset that I slipped in the original Electric Music Box font on the 218E that didn't match his newer drawing. I had succumbed to the kind of nostalgia that Don loathed. He didn't even keep the same font from Lightning 2 to Lightning 3. The point is that Don evolved. Because by 1978, the panel layouts were more unique, and banana colors evolved to indicate types of inputs and outputs. Since then, black bananas for CV inputs, blue bananas mean CV outputs. Red bananas indicate pulse outputs, while orange bananas equal pulse inputs. There are alternatives. Just like Don rejected the uniformity of his 100 series panels, he saw variety as informative. So now, black but sometimes gray CV inputs, blue but often purple, and finally the occasional green for CV outputs. If you glance at a 223 panel, you see it only has two inputs. The 291E clearly has no CV outputs. And when you perform live and patch live, that can make a big difference. I can't stress how much Don appreciated live performance. He was the most reliable concert goer I've ever known. So that's Buchla Bananas explained. Don started with sort of a scientific inspiration and moved his designs toward ergonomics and art. I hope it inspires you to perform on Buchla instruments, maybe even design a few things. Ooh, post-credit scene. Yes, indeed. I wanted to clear up a few things for you Buchla easel nerds. Yes, indeed, I used a 208, that is a 2014 208, briefly, to stand in for the 1974 208. It's because that's what I had. And you'll also have noticed that I had pulled the colors off of the modulation oscillator section. Now, why did I do that? Well, one, I didn't want to confuse people because, of course, the color-associated sections here are what they are. And for some reason, the mod oscillator section, which was also blue, has very close to it another blue banana, which never made intuitive sense to me because its banana output is way over here, like an afterthought. In fact, it was black on the original. So I simply pulled them off. Well, not only for that reason, but because I had already pulled them off and what I had left were, well, I had already had the green ones on there and it was easier to just pull them off. And why did I go with green? Well, obviously for the 208C, I have moved over to green and given the mod oscillator its own color and colored banana. Now, other color changes were, well, on both the 2014 and the 208C, these are all black. In the original, this was purple and this was red, or rather violet. So we could have made that violet. Don decided to go with black because he wanted to make sure it was thought of as an input. However, this is indeed the same bus. So it would have been strange to tell people to plug into an output, but it is the bus. It's the same. However, on the 208C, it is unique. It is actually a true input. It means what comes in here comes out there, but not the other way around. That's because if you generate MIDI pressure, you can then derive these banana outputs. However, it will mix with this input as an active mix. So it'll sum the output of this, or the input of that, and the input from the MIDI. So it makes sense to be black. It has to be black. Now, regarding the color here, this was originally red, but that didn't make sense because now it's an input. Red is an output. But we could have made it orange, right? That would have been logical, except for there's such a strong association with the envelope generator that we weren't going to confuse you by putting orange there now. So we decided to make it black because a pulse is really just another form of control voltage, if you think about it. On the new one, I could have made it red. Now, why would I have done that? Well, I didn't because it's still an input, but it is actually on the keyboard bus, keyboard pulse bus, that is, because if you generate a pulse from MIDI, if you have, like I said, the correct hardware, if you have an easel command, for instance, then the pulse bus will actually be seen here. And if it had been red, you wouldn't realize, okay, that's an output as well as an input. So if I made that red, you would realize, oh, okay, I could make that a pulse output to send, I don't know, nowhere on the easel necessarily, but maybe if you had a larger system, you could use that. And now you know. So you can still do that. If you choose, the signal's there, but I chose to keep it black. Speaking of black, for those of you making DIY panels of a 200 series or 100 series, I really encourage you to update your colors for the outputs to blue or purple, or violet rather, and to orange for pulse inputs. It would honor Don more, I believe, to do that than it would be to imitate his panels exactly as they were in the past. That makes sense for people who are restoring historical pieces. Historical pieces, I believe, should be as intact as possible. However, when you're not making a historical piece, you should really move forward in some way a little bit, and that would be a pragmatic way to do so. And it would, like I said, it would honor him more. And if you want to read more about Don's arguments of sound versus structure, why he used bananas versus audio cable jacks for CVs, you can read about that in a Source magazine compilation you can get actually these days from your independent bookstore. So enjoy Don's thinking. I hope it encourages creativity in you.